Welcome back, everyone, to the Sporting Chance podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Mountain State Falconry Supply.com, your home for your micro hawking needs.
What's up, guys? If you're anything like me and you like braided equipment, leashes, jesses, there's no better place than MidnightFalconry.com. Richard Moats puts a lot of effort into the finest, tightest braids that money can buy.
Listen, folks, now's the time. Heck, it might even be too late. Check out North Mountain Goshawks to secure your hunting partner for, inshallah, next season, but possibly the season after. All right, folks, welcome back to another exciting episode of the Sporting Chance podcast. Wanted to open up this episode to just briefly discuss the subject at hand. This guest is the author of the brand new book, Undiscovered Corbett. And I know the majority of our listeners out there are falconers, not big game hunters, but the subject at hand is extremely interesting. And I really feel like if you guys give this one a shot, it's going to be much like the Gavin Lipye's episode where we discuss hunting leopards with hounds, where it's such a fascinating subject, and there is wisdom to take that you can apply to falconry by studying Corbett. And I think falconers have a lot in common with him in the way that he views the natural world. What do you think, Casey?
No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I just think it's there's just some topics like that are, I mean, there's a reason why there's so many different books, and you type in killer any big cat, and there's going to be 30 YouTube videos talking about Jim Corbett and everything he did, and like sleeping in trees, almost getting killed multiple times, and then taking out like legitimate man-eating big cats that were just terrorizing poor defenseless Indian people. It's like a really good subject, and we dive into it.
Yeah. And Ian was he's an authority on it, and he had some like truly fascinating hands-on adventures in India. Literally hands-on. Yeah, literally. You have to listen to the episode for more about that. But we kind of kick things off in the episode with some technical errors on my part. So Casey and Ian were just talking, and I could hear from a distance they were discussing peregrines in Ian's area in North England. And the idea that, well, actually, it's not an idea, but the fact that some of those peregrines nest below sea level, which I found to be super crazy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it took me a minute to follow what he was saying, but then it made sense that like the giant like mine shafts and stuff, like old quarries that are like deep under the ground.
Yeah.
They're literally below sea level, but they're still like 500 feet from the bottom. It's like so trippy what he was explaining.
And that he has witnessed wild goshawks catching invasive gray squirrels over there.
Blasphemy!
And Ian's not a falconer. He's just a naturalist, just into wildlife like we are.
Yeah. He has no biases. He just witnesses nature in action, and and we're just talking about it. So
yeah, that's it. So you guys, please check this episode out and enjoy. You guys were saying the forests have all been they've all been forested at some point. Casey, there used to be in the mountains here some sycamore trees that were like nearly redwood size that were logged that falcons actually peregrines nested in.
Because they were that tall?
Yeah.
Well, that's insane. Because they were probably so large that there was almost like a ledge of sorts that they could actually nest on. Because they don't build nests, so they would just nest on like a platform of how big that's interesting.
That's wild.
It is.
I wonder if the peregrine here in Northumberland is the same as you guys have.
It's the same bird, just different subspecies.
Yeah.
Same thing with goshawks. We got goshawks, and you guys have the famous European goshawks, which are bigger and calmer and more resistant to disease and stuff like that.
Just better in general.
The last view I had of a goshawk, it was carrying away a grey squirrel. We have
Ah.
we have American escapes, and the goshawks have zoomed in on them. No trouble.
Oh yeah, they love them. Well, that's cool. When did you see that?
That was a couple of weeks ago.
See, like that's crazy to me because like there's people like you could go your whole life trying to see a goshawk in the wild and you'll never ever see one.
All right, no, we've got them more pinned down than that. We haven't got too many peregrines breeding in Northumberland. I think the limit is cliff sites. Our county is quite rural for the UK, but there aren't a lot of cliff ledges high enough up to make a peregrine feel safe.
Right.
I actually worked on a site once. It was I was working on the restoration of an open cast coal mine, which went down 400 foot digging for coal, obviously. So it had a 400-foot vertical wall. So we had peregrine falcons nesting 200 feet below sea level, which was quite novel.
Really? That's insane.
They weren't put off by the big trucks, huge dumper trucks. The drag line, the boom on it was 90 meters or something. So this was a big kit, big coal mines. And the peregrines, they didn't see that as disturbance. They grew up with that. They saw it every day.
What was the diameter of the shaft?
Well, the open cast site was a square mile, but they didn't, in a sense, have the hole to the full depth all the time. They almost worked around in a sort of slices of a cake pattern. So they took one out and put the second spoil heap into the first hole.
Oh, I see.
And sort of rotated around. So there was always one part of it that was 400 foot deep, but it sort of worked around. But it's a square mile. That was a big size site.
It's huge.
And that's restored now as mainly reed beds and wetlands. So it brings in a lot of ducks and reed bed birds and things like that. Otters are there all the time.
Oh, yeah, that's cool. Like sea otters or...
No, we just have European otter. So having said that, because there isn't a proper sea otter here, we don't have one like they do in California or the West Coast.
Right.
Our otters move up and down the coast as well and sort of pick through the strand line and things like that.
Gotcha.
But they're not really sea otters. They would just swim across the mouth of a river where it was salty, that sort of thing.
Oh, gotcha.
But they're really common in Northumberland now. All the rivers in the county run down to the sea. We don't have long rivers, really. Our biggest river would be 50 Mile in the county. And there's otters on all of them because there's trout in all of them.
Yeah, they could do... otters are amazing animals, but they can do a number on, fish numbers in certain stretches of river because they're so efficient.
Yeah, we have problems in the UK, I suppose, where there's fish in pond situations. In a river... actually, the otters have done us a good turn because we had escaped North American mink that are established here.
Really?
From mink farms being let out or escaped or whatever. And as soon as the otters sort of came back to the rivers, the mink cleared out.
Oh, yeah.
So the mink were problems. And if that good job of the otters, that loses the mink. If it costs us a few trout, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I think they go more for eels and certainly crayfish around here. They're very big on the crayfish.
Oh yeah,
so
they're amazing animals. We were just talking. What episode was that? We were talking a couple of weeks ago, Aaron, about how dangerous they can be for people swimming and boating, and
it was one of the biggest complaints that people have in America is. He said it was a surprising amount of negative feedback about the animal was the otter.
Wow.
Yeah. It was. Oh, yeah, that's right. It was Sportsman's Party. It was like a big company. I guess you call it a company, but they do many different things. They make like fishing lures. They're like a very large company that they run, and they post online different articles and stuff like that. And they said the out of everything they post, grizzly bears, polar bears, this, that, the other thing, the thing that got people the most fired up in one way or another was otters.
Really?
Which was, I would never guess that. And they said there's people that absolutely hate them, and then there's people that absolutely love them. And it's like this huge dynamic.
I'm in the love it camp. But in the UK, if there's fish in a pond situation and the otter find them, it's dinner time.
Yeah,
that's very artificial. On a normal river situation, the otters aren't a problem for our trout. I sort of fish close to here on quite a small river. It's burn fishing, really, as we would call it, a small stream, and nowhere is it more than 20 foot across. You can wade it knee depth most of the time. Otters, I find otters sprint the droppings, chewed up food remains every time I go fishing.
Wow.
And I see otters actually probably weekly.
Oh, that's so cool.
The otter toilet when you see the pile of fish scales.
Yeah.
An
An
American trapper term. I don't know if it is used over there.
Why don't they just call it the pile of otter?
Well, they'll return to the same place to use the bathroom.
Yes, I
know.
They do.
Name. I would think, Ian, as an author, I think there's probably a more elegant way you could say that. An otter toilet. It's an otter toilet.
It's an otter toilet.
Yes.
That's America for you.
Yeah.
Ian, our podcast is named after a book by an American author. The book was called A Sporting Chance, and it's the same author that did. Casey's got a copy of it there.
There we are.
It's Daniel Mannix. He also wrote the book The Fox and the Hound.
Right.
If you'd ever heard of that.
Wait, he wrote that book that the movie's based off?
Yeah. You didn't pick that up with Jim Hoover?
I got it, but I didn't put two and two together that he wrote the book that the movie that Walt Disney made the movie out of. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So the
all right, whatever. My mind's
we'll process that later, Casey.
All right.
So he wrote in that book, A Sporting Chance, was about a lot of different what he would call sporting methods of hunting quarry. And one of those, he talked about the otter hunts in England. And he said it was like a community affair, and people would start at the top of the river and work their way down. And there were the otter hounds were used, and
to hunt them. You're saying,
to hunt them.
That happened around here till I'm guessing the 1970s, perhaps. That was sort of banned in the UK. So you're right. It was a local thing. Farmers and gamekeepers, the like people who were interested in the countryside, would get together with a pack of dogs, and the dogs were typically trained more or less to follow the otter, the scent, and they would work down a riverbank. When otters, we more or less lost otters through most of the UK. It started 1960s, 70s, 80s, and by the 80s through most of England they were gone. There were a few hung on in Northumberland, where I am, up north of Newcastle, close to the Scottish border, but very few. So otter hunting was banned. It had almost stopped anyway because there was no otters. Some otter hounds switched to hunting mink, which had been released. That's a North American one. We had on fur farms here. They got out. Some were let go by animal rights types, and they've been a problem ever since.
Yeah, mink can do a number on a lot of different things.
Yeah. There was certainly a problem on our stretch of fishing. They took more trout. They took small birds when they were breeding. Rodents that were sort of quite, water vole, which is quite a rare one in the UK. They could follow them down their burrows, things like that. So the mink were a problem. The return of the otters has largely addressed that. And the mink now need to be really, really careful, because you know the size of a big otter, you know the size of a mink. It's no contest.
Not at all. No.
It's interesting. It's almost like the reintroduction of the wolf to Yellowstone. How the coyotes were no longer a problem when the wolves came back and put them into check.
Yeah.
Supposedly, in America, we have big predators are very controversial. A lot of ranchers and hunters. Some hunters will dislike them, but they say that the coyotes would prey on the calves, the newborn calves of elk and things like that, and the wolves typically targeted the older, weaker elk.
Yeah.
So healthier for the population of elk. And
you would guess there was sort of a group of deer or whatever were panicked by wolves. The slow deer at the back with a limp, whatever, would be the obvious target, wouldn't it? Or the younger one that's losing strength and trailing behind.
Yeah, it makes sense. But I don't think they're going to pass up a calf either way, though.
But maybe their style of hunting might might encourage that the prey they actually end up getting is an older, weaker animal.
Yeah.
Whereas the coyote's style of sneaking around in the brush and maybe finding the ones that are bed down, the calf that's bed down might be. I'm sure some of our listeners, friends of the show, are probably like, Aaron's being a liberal.
Yeah, it sounds like, I was just going to say, it sounds a little bit like propaganda.
Yeah, which is why I'm prefacing all this by saying, I don't know. This is just what I've read and what I understood. I have not seen it firsthand. So, Ian, we have you on the heels of your book being written, being published, Undiscovered Corbett.
Yeah.
And
have you read it?
I am a big fan of Jim Corbett. Casey is also a Jim Corbett fan himself.
That's great to hear.
When I saw your book, I jumped on the opportunity to have somebody on that could discuss Corbett in depth with us.
Well, I hope I can help you out there.
I got a feeling you might be able to.
Yeah.
So Ian is calling to us from England. Correct me if I'm wrong. Every time I talk about England, I get very uncomfortable because I feel like I don't really understand it very well. But you are calling to us from England, correct?
That's right, yeah. I live in the north of England, close to the border with Scotland.
Okay. Because I don't really understand Wales and things like that. So.
Right, yeah. Well, the main bit you would identify on the map is split into the three: Wales, England, Scotland, and Wales sort of bottom left, Scotland on the top, and we're in England.
My last name is Scottish, and the Kincaids came from just north of the border.
Well, Ian Douglas is a very Scottish name as well.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a castle? Casey, there's a castle Kincaid.
There was a huge clan at Douglas historically, and usually on the wrong side when it came to wars and battles and things like that. But there's quite a lot of Douglases in Scotland, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, we have a family crest. That's all I know.
Oh, family crest. That's nice.
Yeah, so that must mean we had at least a house to live in or something.
I think a bit of history to go with that.
His family crest, though, it was a guy spanking a dog and a woman scooping manure up.
I'll try to get that mental picture out of my head now.
Ours, Casey, believe it or not, is an arm coming out of a castle holding a sword. The Kincaid.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
It says, "This I'll defend." It's pretty neat.
Ours is like a lion. It's on my back.
Casey, when did you discover Jim Corbett then?
I discovered him before Aaron did, believe it or not. And Aaron on the show is he's the learned scholar of the show.
Right.
He's an educated guy, likes to read, and I'm more of an audiobook kind of guy.
Okay. Right.
I'm going to swoop in here and correct Casey. I've heard of Corbett, and I knew of the man-eating tigress. And was the Rudraprayag leopard, is that the record man-eating leopard to this date?
No, not really. I suppose to start at the beginning, I discovered Corbett when I was a child. I grew up in a house with books, and I was interested in natural history. And at the time, this would be the 1960s and 70s, if you were interested in the natural history of India, the books had been written, in effect, during the British period prior to independence. There were obviously Indian naturalists, but they were really still yet to put their views and thoughts in writing. So the literature was quite old, and Corbett was a part of that. And the first time I read his books, I was going out in the countryside every free hour I had. And I was, familiar with the deer that we had, badgers, the birds, those sort of things. And what Corbett was doing seemed miraculous to me. And I actually tested out some of the things to see if it would work. And that was largely sort of tracking things and following stuff through the forests. And it was possible and it was doable. And as a 12-year-old, that was a great discovery. And I suppose that interest has just carried on.
Are you a collector of Jim Corbett books and items?
Well, I would like to be. I've got original copies that I've had since I was a child of all his books. I've now got paperback working copies like probably everybody else has, with loads of little tags of paper stuffed into the pages. I've got one postcard which Jim has signed saying something like, "I'm back." And as far as memorabilia goes, that's as far as it's got.
That's pretty good.
I want to show off. I've got my stack of books here. But that's an item I really want is something that he signed. I think that'd be super cool. They're out there. They're not very cheap.
Out there. Yeah.
They're not crazy expensive, but so the man-eating leopard of Rudraprayag.
Yes. That is some ripping yarn, isn't it?
Oh, can't wait to get into that one. Jungle Lore.
Yes.
Temple Tiger,
and more man-eaters have come out. Yeah,
and some of these the cover art on the old book.
Yeah, that was his first genuinely published book. He published a book prior to that in the mid-30s, Jungle Stories, which was a privately published limited edition of 100 copies, and I've seen one copy. I'm never going to find one.
I bet that's a valuable one. I think they've reprinted it, right? But not an original. This is my favorite cover.
It's cool.
Yeah.
I got two more. Another man-eaters.
Yeah.
I love that one
spree,
too.
Huh?
Ah.
Well, so friend of the show, Joe Franklin, he's a falconer, and there's another cover of man-eaters.
Yeah.
He's a falconer over there in England. He did me a favor. I found some stuff on ebay.uk, the English eBay.
Yes.
And they wouldn't ship to America. So I had my friend over there in England. He bought them for me. I paid him and he mailed them to me.
Yeah. If people are getting into Corbett, I mean, certainly the eBay and the like that we get in the UK, the stuff is available as cheap or as expensive as you want to go. There's leather-bound sort of gold embossed editions that you can indulge, or you can get a sort of book to stuff in a haversack for, I guess it's a few dollars in the States. They're still sort of widely available. They've never really been out of print.
It's good.
Which says something. They were all published in the 40s and 50s.
They are here. They're obtainable here, but there's the cooler, like nicer editions with the cool vintage dust jackets. You can't really find those here, so they're only over there.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
For those of you out there listening who are not familiar with Jim Corbett, you've picked up on a few things here and there. I'm sure that he was a legendary hunter and conservationist in India. He was an Anglo-Indian, so he was born in India. His parents were from the UK because I think his dad was Irish, correct?
Yeah.
And he took down the most notorious man-eaters in the world that were in India at the time in the early 1900s. Including the man-eating tigress of Champawat, who killed, I believe, and Ian, correct me if I'm wrong, 436 people this tigress killed.
That's the total. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That works out at roughly about, if people find that hard to credit, the tiger sort of had a career, for want of a better word, of about 8 years, and it works out at about one a week.
Wow.
So one human. So it's not of, and there would be probably numbers in excess of that. Anybody who died of a mauling or wounds later would not be counted. And I would almost guarantee that at that time in India, which is before the First World War, not every death was reported. Some people would just go missing.
A lot of them are not even reported now. My algorithm on social media for some reason just shows a bunch of very graphic things coming out of India of people getting electrocuted, and then they're just laying on the side of the road and they're there for like a week, and like nobody. It's a very interesting place. So I could see how a leopard or a tiger that fixated on humans as an easy source of food could easily just do a number on a village, a town, with impunity, basically.
Yeah. I think there's still issues now in the Sundarbans, which is the Ganges Delta, in effect, with man-eating tigers. There's been some speculation that's because those tigers, actually, because they're in brackish water, they're struggling to get totally fresh water to drink, and the salt has some effect on them. But there's certainly issues ongoing there with man-eating tigers. Yeah.
So what is it that Corbett found would push animals to turning to men for food?
he reckoned really that it wasn't typically old age; it was infirmity in some way. So they were injured, most likely by they'd been shot at, taken a wound, not followed up and killed at the time. This is sport hunters or poachers, whatever. Or they'd had a fight, typically with a porcupine, got a load of porcupine quills into the leg of them. So they were, to an extent, disabled, prevented from catching their natural prey. And there's some evidence that perhaps tigresses, rather than the males, when they had young aboard, the pressures on finding food was even greater. So there was potentially more tigresses went on to become man-eaters than tigers. Jim reckoned that was at the root of it. And obviously there was disturbance in places due to increasing human population, grazing pressures and like. So natural prey patterns were disturbed. Natural prey moved away. So tigers turned to the likes of sort of grazed stock cattle taken into the forests.
Mm-hmm.
Which still happens in India today. There's still pressure on the national parks from grazing stock, and I suppose you could say that even a perfectly healthy, normal tiger, if one slightly sick or whatever cow comes detached at the end of the day when they're driven back to the village, that's a potential victim.
Mm.
Yeah.
The man-eating tigress of Champawat, she was found to have had a gunshot, Jim believed, to that broke her upper canines.
Yeah.
And that was upper and lower canines.
That was presumably just enough to sort of prevent her getting a good hold or keeping a good hold on prey animals. It was actually in Nepal a few years back, and we came across I suppose it's like a domesticated yak. In that part of Nepal, they're called Zo, DZO. And basically, they're like a yak, but a smaller animal. And this had been taken by a predator, quite obviously. We were high up, 4,000 meters, so there wasn't a huge choice of predators. And it turned out to cut the chase to have been a snow leopard.
Wow.
But on examining it closely, I initially said, this animal's been shot. There's a hole here on the back of the head. And then, of course, 1 second later, there's another one about 3 inches away. And then there's 2 more as a pair down here. So the upper and lower jaws had come onto the back side of the neck, I suppose, was where it got it. And one of the canines had actually pierced the skull, just like a rifle bullet had gone straight through it. So they've taken this down with a bite grip sufficient to pierce the skull. And I couldn't tell from the remains whether it dislocated the neck on the way down or whatever, but it had been clearly rolled over.
Wow.
We found tracks of the snow leopard higher up, but in the snow, that was a good tracking medium. Even I, inexperienced, could identify that is the track of what can only be a snow leopard up here.
Wow,
when it went across the rough gravel in the snow, I couldn't track it.
That's oh my goodness! To find a snow leopard kill, and just be in that environment, that was probably incredible.
That was quite a special thing. I did a trek all the way around the Annapurna Massif, and a lot of that was in forest and things. So we saw a lot of wildlife. It was good. I didn't see a snow leopard. I've never seen one.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if it's just me, but when I see snow leopards, I don't see a dangerous animal. Like it looks kind of like what are those? The palace cats, like the real fluffy.
Yeah.
They kind of remind me of that. But then recently I saw a lady she might have been killed, but she was definitely attacked by a snow leopard.
Wow.
Oh yeah. That video is crazy. Yeah. It's just straight up trying to eat her.
But it's just, it's a high altitude, very cold weather leopard is what it is. So it's not a fluffy, cute animal. It's a potentially dangerous predator.
Mm-hmm. Dude, a bobcat could kill you, Aaron.
It's true.
It can.
No,
is there bobcats in Europe?
No, we don't know those guys.
So we have bobcats here in the United States, and you see them I wouldn't say frequently, no, but they're around, fairly common, very common in certain areas. And it's basically, what would you say, Aaron? Twice the size of a house cat?
Yeah,
if 2 or 3 times maybe.
That could certainly make a bit of a mess of you, couldn't it? It was all claws and teeth.
Well, and Ian, they they will routinely take down white-tailed deer.
Wow.
That's like one of their prey species is that they'll kill white-tailed deer, which is insane because it's like a cat that's like, I saw one roadkill. I mean, it was, no more than 30 pounds. Like 30 pounds is a really big one, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
So what's the weight of a white-tailed deer?
I mean, anywhere from 100 a doe, 130 pounds.
Yeah.
A buck, 190-ish, even smaller, but they will take them down. And that is part of their prey base in the wild. And it's like, you see this little cat and like, I mean, if it wanted to kill a human, and got to jump on you, there's really not much you could do to stop it.
Yeah. The last time I was in India, we hired, three of us hired old motorbikes, Royal Enfield Bullets that are made in India. This old British bike, I suppose, that's been reincarnated in India. And we rode those up to the Himalayas. And first place we went to was similar. I was jumped by a monkey there. Oh, yeah. This rhesus macaque. I hadn't made eye contact or anything. I wasn't holding a banana or anything like that. As I saw it, unprovoked, this monkey threw itself on my back, and I hit the ground. This wasn't a big monkey, but throwing itself at you, you go down, trust me. This thing had its teeth into my collar, chewing away, and I was on the ground with people all around in the street scrapping with this bloody monkey. And the strength of the things is hard to credit. So I got away with a couple of scratches, landed a couple on the monkey, which eventually decided, it wanted to be somewhere else. But it's huge strength compared to us.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I'm just imagining a bunch of like Indian, what's the bicycle with the
rickshaw? No,
yeah, rickshaw. Yeah. Just standing around smoking cigarettes, watching you get.
I was the live show that afternoon, anyway. Yeah.
You have to go get any? Do you have to get any kind of shots after that?
No, I got scratches and things, not from the monkey, from the ground, but it had a hold of the collar. There was teeth marks in the collar, and it was right on the back of my neck. I could feel it on my neck, but its teeth were on the collar.
Ooh.
So that was close. That was
catch Ebola from that. Yeah, be careful.
Yeah. That was quite a trip, though. We rode all the way along the Indian Himalayas on these old bikes. We went to Nainital, where Jim lived in the summer. We went to Kaladungi, where he was in the winter. We had a great time, saw loads of wildlife, visited the parks. It was good.
Did you visit Jim Corbett National Park?
I did, yeah. We went up there for a few days and went out on trips into the park. So we tracked tiger, but we didn't see tiger. Saw elephants, gharial, the sort of fish-eating crocodiles, mugger crocodiles, sloth bear. We had a great time. We went out on a couple of elephant sort of rides, looking for wildlife, which was great. Came back to I suppose it's like an elephant yard where they park these guys up at night. They have like Dutch barns over them, so the elephants are sort of chained up, manacled in effect, in a roofed structure to keep the sun and the rain off. And these guys had just been put to bed and given us sugar cane, and we were there watching all this. And a wild Muckner elephant, which is the one that doesn't have tusks. I suppose it's a sort of subtype. But because I guess they're not putting all that calcium into their tusks, the bones are bigger, so they're thick set, front row type of elephant, if you like. And this wild elephant was coming, trumpeting at the captive elephants. And the biggest one was this Tuskar Raja with huge tusks that nearly rested on the ground, enormous elephant. And the two of them were roaring at each other and bellowing, and it was getting dark. And I was there with one of the trackers, Krishna, standing halfway between the captive elephant and his wild Muckner. I thought, we're probably in a bad place here, Krishna, aren't we? This is getting a bit out of hand. But it rattled your chest when these things were trumpeting and bellowing. It was quite an experience.
I can imagine.
Incredible. So we can't really talk about Jim Corbett without talking about Rigby rifles.
Yeah.
And I know that was special. The foreword in your book was written by the guy that manages Rigby.
Yeah, Mark.
And
that was very good.
Is he the guy in the documentary that Rigby posted of him taking the rifle to back to India?
That's Mark, yes. Yeah, okay. That's pretty special, isn't it?
Extremely.
Yeah, yeah. I went down to Rigby's. I live about 300 miles.
Ian, would you mind, before we get into Rigby, because a lot of our listeners are falconers that are not gun hunters, and I wanted to explain what Rigby is, to maybe lay some groundwork, so to give them some appreciation for how special they are.
Yep.
Would you mind giving us a brief rundown of what Rigby is?
Rigby's are a gun manufacturer in the UK. They've been making sporting rifles and guns for the last couple of 100 years. They offer really prestige weapons now, and they did historically. So following the shooting of the Champawat Maneater, there was a reward at the time offered for the shooting of that tiger, which Jim declined to take, and he was presented with a Rigby rifle in recognition of that. I suppose many years passed. Obviously, Jim passed away, and he left the Rigby rifle with his publishers, Oxford University Press in the UK. And John Rigby and Co. in London reacquired the rifle from Oxford University Press, and they have it now displayed pride of place in their showroom and museum in their premises in London. Mm-hmm. And I went down to see the gun, made an appointment, and it was great. I think I was just expecting to look at it in the case, to be honest, but I put on the little white cotton gloves and it was handed to me, which was a bit of a sort of jaw-dropping moment. I was absolutely amazed. I really wasn't expecting that. They kept that very quiet, just sort of, here you are.
Wow.
Let's hope it's not loaded, eh? So I familiarized myself with the gun for a few minutes, and then they have an original copy of Jungle Stories, the privately published book, 100 copies, only published by Jim in 1935. And they read out the scenario of Jim shooting the Chowgar Maneater while I acted it out. Hopefully, just as Jim did, to see if this scenario was possible. So, very special occasion, which I'll not forget.
Wow, yes.
These days, the Rigby rifles, if you wanted to buy a brand new one, they are, about $20,000 is about what you could expect to pay. You could definitely do things to make it cost more.
You could, yes. They have sort of special rifles, and they're really high-end kit, but they're absolutely beautiful things, works of art.
It's the kind of thing, if I won the lottery,
you would have to.
One.
Yeah.
There's one of those documentaries on YouTube, and it might be the one that me and Ian were talking about, where the manager of Rigby takes Jim Corbett's original Rigby rifle back to India to some of the locations that the rifle was used. And there's a rifle they made that has engravings of some of the famous man-eaters on it.
Yeah.
There's one that has the Champawat man-eater with the broken teeth.
Yep.
And then somewhere on there is the man-eater of Rudraprayag.
Yeah.
And I forget what that went for at auction. They auctioned it off, I think, for charity. It went for a lot of money. You would have had to have won the lottery or have the last name Roy to be able to afford it.
You talking millions of dollars, or?
I think it was hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
Okay. I could see it being more than that.
I want to say it was $200,000 for this.
I think that rings a bell with me as well. Yeah. There was also a Jeffrey rifle, which Jim had, which he carried a 450, 400, and that was sold for that sort of money. That's in the States, I believe.
Mm. And what did he shoot the man-eating tigress of Champawat with?
That's interesting. There's been a debate about that. I suppose I could cut to the chase and say read the book, but it's pretty likely that it was a Jeffrey rifle.
Okay, and that one is not accounted for.
No, that one is not accounted for. I wish I knew where it was.
It's probably sitting in a corner of some hut in India.
Yeah. I've been, like I say, I started as a child, read the books, and then started to see some of the lessons, I suppose, that Jim gave us, particularly in jungle law, would work in practice. So now you would identify these as woodcraft or whatever, survival skills. The terminology's changed, but the skills are still the same. A guy still tracks a deer the same way through a forest, etc. And I started doing that, and I was fascinated by it. I was always into natural history. It's been a theme of my whole life. And yeah, I suppose once I'd read the books, I wanted to know more. So part of that was going to India. I've been about 10 times, gone to Himalayas and the whole Indian subcontinent, not just where Jim went. I wanted to see some of those animals. I wanted to experience those forests. I wanted to wake up in the morning with the birds singing in those hills, that kind of thing. But I started looking for other things from Jim, because basically at the time we just got the books and that Jim had wrote. A couple of, I suppose, biographies, for want of a better word, appeared. Other books about Jim, in effect, that had gathered various things together. But largely these were sort of a means of presenting a précis of Jim's books. There wasn't much new coming out. And I started chasing stuff. And I suppose with the internet, it became easier to contact people, track people down. And I started to discover things. Letters that Jim had written, experiences from people who'd been out with Jim, hunted with him, been in the forest with him, etc. And I just began to accumulate it. And all these years later, I've had enough to put together. I was put on the spot, actually. I was quite happy in my research when I went to somewhere, if you like, and found an album with photos in and looked through it. And on page 200, here's a photo of Jim. That was the gold. That was the treasure that I was discovering. And that was great. But eventually, somebody basically said to me, and what will become of all this research? And I was put on the spot. And I genuinely hadn't thought it through. Yes, there's a thing now. What will become of it all? And the guy said, you've identified all these people from our albums. We don't know who they are. Nobody else is ever going to know who they are. So it was more or less, it'll have to be me then. So I sort of realized that this probably should be put out there before it goes, and people don't know who these folk are. So I started to get a bit more focused. I'd accumulated a lot of stuff, but when I looked at it all, it didn't tell the whole story. There were gaps. So I started focusing on filling a few of the gaps. Jim's time in France in the First World War hadn't really been covered anywhere. His time in Waziristan, up on the borders of what's now Afghanistan, Pakistan, hadn't been covered. And some of the stories, even that he tells in the books, which is largely about the man he does, are supposed to be fair, they were almost sort of half stories, or things that, you know, the end wasn't clear. So I just tried to pin a few things down, and eventually got to a point where I thought that's probably as far as I can take it. So hence the book.
I'm looking forward to ordering a copy of your book, and I encourage everybody out there to do the same thing. It's called Undiscovered Corbett by Ian Douglas. And special shout out, while we're on that subject, to Lydia from the publisher Merlin Unwin Books.
Merlin Unwin Books, yep.
Thank you to Lydia for putting all of this together.
Lydia's done a great job.
Lady. I love how I was able to see an advanced digital copy of it, and I haven't got to dig into it. And really, I have trouble reading digital books, so I need the real thing in front of me.
Yeah.
But I love how it's broken down into subjects across the board, and it covers everything you said, and including like the man-eating tigress, the champawat.
Yeah.
There's you talk about the things in it that were not, that Corbett himself did not write about, which, if you understand Corbett as we do, you know that he was a very modest guy. And he left details out that any normal person would absolutely have put in, because he was so humble and so modest. It's like he was embarrassed to talk about himself.
I think he was. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Champawat is the first man-eater we know about. And I think it probably was the first one. There's been a dispute on for years about actually how many he shot. 10 is the usual given number, but I think it's possible that there was one or two more than that. It's quite hard to tell. I went through a huge archive in the UK at Oxford University Press, and there's a few sort of disjointed letters which make you think that he was clearly checking out on something or going after something else, but how all these things ended, it's a little bit hard to tell. He gives slightly contradictory numbers through his life as well. The Chowgar Manita, at times, the cub, which also helped to kill people, is counted by Jim, and at other times it isn't. Mm-hmm. I guess just for convenience sake or to present a story or whatever, yeah. The Champawat was the first one I addressed in the book, and I thought that was the place to sort of lay the case for the sort of the background to so much of his slaying of man-eaters. So there was more explanation there of the sort of habitat that he was in and the things that drove tigers to be man-eaters and how you set about dealing with one and that kind of thing. But basically, I tried to present information that was new. I knew that quite a few people would come to the book if they did at all, having read Corbett's books, and that's fine. So this was not going to be a précis of his previous works. And equally, if people saw this book as a way to discover Corbett, that had to work for them as well. The language as well.
There's so many books written that's just rehashing what he already told, which is why I think yours is particularly interesting.
There are some books which could be seen as a bit of a rehash. It was quite an easy sort of, I guess, easy ground for people to go over. But I had different material, and that was what was important to get out there, rather than just the research sit in my attic or whatever when I'm gone.
Yeah, well, I think it's super important for you to get that out there. Now, when we talk about him being modest and humble, the one that jumps out to me is when he killed the man-eater Champawat. He never, if you read his account of it, he just simply states the governor gave him the Rigby rifle as a gift after doing it.
Yeah.
Corbett himself doesn't talk about, I would not accept the reward, so this is what they gave to me.
Well, that was a difficult one because the Champawat man-eater theoretically had already been shot, of course. There was an earlier case, just I think a couple of months before sort of Jim focused his attention on it, where a chap actually shot a tiger and claimed the reward. And government decided that, yes, this tiger is the man-eater, paid the reward, and then a week or two later, the death toll continues. So it put them in, I think, embarrassment hardly covers the situation that they were in. They'd paid the money. This army officer had gone off pocketing the money quite happily. And I think potentially the army officer was absolutely dead genuine. And what the evidence was that theoretically established this was the man-eater, I don't know. It's not recorded. But anyway, Jim was obviously sort of called to try and address the embarrassment or the situation they found themselves in. And Jim said, well, whether the initial reward was paid or not, I don't accept rewards. So I'll deal with this tiger, which he did. And I think getting the government out of a corner, or whatever, they bought a Rigby rifle and presented it to him.
His love for his fellow countrymen, which he absolutely viewed them as, he didn't see himself as much different from any other Indian. He did it for the love of his countrymen.
Yeah, he saw that way, certainly. Yeah, and it became a sense of duty to him as well. He felt obliged to.
Hunting these man-eaters for him, I mean, it must have taken up a lot of his time. What was he doing? Was he independently wealthy? Like, what was he doing for for a living?
He wasn't independently wealthy as we would understand it now. He came from a British family in India. They weren't poverty stricken, but His father worked at the post office, died when Jim was quite young. The family had to rent out their house in the winter when they moved down the valley to the Caledungi, where they stayed through the cold weather to make ends meet. Jim wanted to be an engineer. They couldn't afford to send him to any college or support him through that. So he just had to go out and, in a sense, make a living and support the family. And he worked on the railway in India. He worked in Bihar, province in India, 300 mile or whatever from Nainital, for 20 odd years. He was there from the 1890s up till towards the end of the First World War, when he was called up and took a Labour battalion to France. So he was on the railways for a long time. I suppose we'd now call that a logistics manager. There was a narrow gauge railway on the north of the Ganges, broad gauge railway on the south of the Ganges, and there was huge problems with transshipment by ferries across the river. Cargo to be unloaded, taken across, loaded again, backwards and forwards, and it was all obviously done manually then, all by hand. Mm. So he was in charge of up to 1,000 men there doing that.
Okay, and then
that was more or less his career. But his mother was quite an astute business lady, and she was renting out houses in Nainital, which is a sort of hill resort. People would take the house for a season, give it back when they went away. She would re-let it, that kind of thing. So she was quite astute in property in that sense, and Jim entered into that a little bit until the 1920s. So when he finished the First World War, he left Makamagat in Bihar, where he was on the railways, and he moved back to Nainital in Caledungi. And his business interests, I suppose he wound them down gradually, but he certainly didn't live an extravagant life. He didn't run a car. His entertainment, I guess, was walking in the forest with his gun or his camera. And he lived that life quite happy and content, yeah.
Okay. So it wasn't like he was like being hired by different municipalities to come in and remove.
No, there was no money again. He was doing it to help people out because they were on a corner. And initially, there was certainly some resentment from parts of the Forest Service and that. Jim was seen as sort of butting in or as an outsider. We can deal with this tiger. We can get the glory. What does he know? There was a bit of that. Eventually, Jim, to some extent, became the go-to man. I think people realized that he was genuine. He could help, and he would help. And in a couple of instances, he had to make a big commitment. The Panama-eating leopard he went to twice, the Rudraprayag leopard, there was 2 seasons before it was tracked down. Mm-hmm. So there was quite an investment in time, and obviously, and the cost to him. He didn't get any expenses for this.
Right. And he had a team with him also, right? He had a couple.
He had guys to pay.
Yeah, guys would come with him, and
they would carry the kit and tie the buffaloes out in the morning, feed the buffaloes, that sort of thing. Look after the camp. Be there with a kettle on when he got back after a night up a tree, to allow him to sort of, I guess, focus on the man.
Yeah.
To your point, in his books, he says, like, my time was limited. I had to sort my affairs. So he was on a trip and he had to go back and work. It was
he did.
I remember that.
Yeah, just certainly between the 2 wars as well. He had a share in a coffee plantation in East Africa, and there was a commitment to go out there for periods. It should have been months. He sometimes cut it down to weeks if he was chasing man-eaters, but he felt an obligation to pull his weight in the coffee plantation in East Africa as well. So that was another commitment on him. And I think as his sister Maggie, who he sort of lived with, whatever, she ran his household in effect. But as they both got older, I think she looked for a bit more of his time, and he felt a commitment to be the man of the house, as it were, and look after the family.
And neither of them ever married, correct?
No, they didn't. No. So they sort of she ran his household in effect, and they went out to East Africa together to retire after Indian independence.
That's nice. They had a nice relationship, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So I find it interesting that it doesn't appear that he was ever involved in killing man-eaters in Africa, even though he lived in Africa.
No. The only evidence I've come across, I suppose the first thing to say is he didn't write hardly at all about his hunting in Africa. And I think that comes down to the fact he didn't really do much. When he went out there, he was working on the coffee plantation. He wasn't sort of, if you like, swanning off with a rifle enjoying himself. He was there to work. But when he did have time, they were shooting for the pot. This was when, if you know, an antelope meant that we had meat on Sunday, that sort of thing. They had actually 2 farms in East Africa, and one of them, they jokingly referred to it as our lion farm from the number of lions that were on it. And the number of lions were considered to be a problem to the point of being dangerous or pests or whatever. And I think on one instance, there was certainly some thinning out of the lions on that farm, which were seen to be threatening. But other than that, I don't think he did a great deal, no.
And he felt no reason to write about it.
No, he didn't. I found a couple of letters which have incidents in, which I've put into the book for completeness' sake, but he wrote very little about it. Yeah.
So now, stupid question. I should probably know the answer to this. The man-eaters of Tsavo, were those 2 different time frames? Am I like, you know what I mean? Was he around for that? Like, do you think maybe he got like a telegram to like?
He didn't know, but that was prior to Jim. But okay. He read the book. He came across the book and he read it, and he said he thought actually it wasn't very well written, but he thought it rang true and it was a cracking story. Okay. And true.
And how many people did those lions eat?
Oh, in Tsavo, I don't know, a lot,
like 300 or something like that. More.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
So, but the
Champawat was in that scale of 400 odd. The Panal leopard was sort of accounted for
almost 700. Right? Wasn't one of them like 700?
There was speculation about it, but certainly the Panal leopard is 400 plus. So I don't know if you put all Jim's man-eaters together, how many that would account for, but
that's a lot. Yeah.
An awful lot, a lot.
And coincidentally, the man-eaters of Tsavo and Jim Corbett's adventures, they're all the lions, all the big cats are eating Indian people.
It appears so.
What are the what is that about? Like, they're in Africa, and the man-eaters of Tsavo were eating Indian people in Africa.
And you know what? That bear that ate that guy in New Jersey, he was Indian, Casey.
He was
Indian
a student
people
at the
are plagued by giant predators.
Yeah, he was a student at the college, and he decided to run.
Trip, wow. When we had that trip across the Himalayas in India on the motorbikes, we stayed at one place quite near Nainital, where Jim had stayed. It was a sort of a dak bungalow, like a post house bungalow, whatever, where staff could stay overnight, which had been converted into accommodation. And Jim and some of his friends had hunted up there. And we were in there at night, and the family there had a great big dog, an Irish wolfhound, which slept in a rocking chair on the porch. And in the middle of the night, it was grabbed by a leopard by the throat.
While you were there?
Really?
While we were there.
Wow.
And taken off. And none of us dared leave the place that night. Obviously, we weren't armed or anything. It was dark. I mean, forest dark. Totally dark. Yeah. Our lighting is candles. So come the morning, there's the sort of drag marks and the blood, and we followed this the drag of this leopard and the dog for about 2 miles. We found parts of the dog, and where the leopard had cleaned its claws on a tree, its droppings containing parts of the dog. We never saw the leopard, which is probably just as well.
But I wonder, did the leopard see you?
Well, that's the worry, isn't it? You never quite know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I uncovered a huge. I could smell a rotting carcass once in the Indian forest, and I kicked apart this huge pile of leaves, which stood about 4 foot tall, and there was a dead cow under it, and I heard a growl in the forest.
Ooh.
And I sort of thought, is something watching me here while I'm and that feeling of look. However, why would a big cat, if that's what it was, give this low, throaty growl. This wasn't like a lion roaring. It was just a sort of throaty rumble type of thing. Why would it do that if it saw me kicking into these leaves? Is that the sort of behavior it would do? The feeling of being watched didn't leave me. I didn't like it at all. So we decided to move on.
I'm sure in your times in India, something was watching you. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most chilling account in Corbett's work of either his kill or a near, where he was nearly killed or someone else was killed?
It's got to be Chowgar when he turns and looks around the large piece of slate almost into the tiger's face. That must chill you to the core.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I think for me, the one that stands out the most, and I think it was Rudraprayag, was some pilgrims were sleeping in a hut, many pilgrims in a hut. And then that night, a woman woke up screaming because she thought she'd been stung by a scorpion.
Yeah.
And they turned on the lamps and she had a scratch on her and they thought, no, that's weird. Anyway, let's go back to bed. Next morning, they found that somebody in the back of the room had been picked up by the leopard, killed and carried out. And on its way out, it accidentally scratched a woman.
God.
And they had no idea. It walked into a room of sleeping people, grabbed someone and killed them.
How do they do that?
It's insane.
I have chills thinking about it.
Yeah. It's crazy and that's why big cats are like we were talking about wolves and coyotes earlier. Big cats are different because they say that they fixate on the quarry that they're after and they won't deviate from it. And they talked about that in the Man-Eaters of Savo also, where it would be like they would go like just like Aaron said, it would have somebody in mind for whatever reason, and it would step over sleeping people to grab one person and drag them out.
Yeah,
it's like
scary.
almost it's like when it's your time. When it's your time, there's nothing you could do about it.
It's like the Final Destination movies.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
Ian, that
go on.
That reminds me of the piece that you wrote in the book about Corbett and the supernatural.
Yeah, I was just going to say that because he brought up that sort of preordained sort of thing. Jim clearly had a feeling or a sensitivity for that sort of thing. The stories or the excerpts, whatever parts of stories, they come up again and again, don't they? And if we could see it through his eyes,
Yeah, you had said in there that he believed that he would not have success killing a man-eater unless he killed a snake first.
Yeah.
And he hated snakes, right?
I think he probably did. Yeah.
Uh-huh. But, I love snakes.
I don't think they're that bad. I've had a couple of close encounters with when you have one poisonous snake in UK and adder, and it's poisonous. It would probably kill a dog. It would, if you were a healthy guy and you got a bite, you would probably get over it. But have a bad day.
That's the European adder, I believe.
That's the European adder. Yes, you have more choice reptiles in the States, don't you?
Yeah, we have some deadly ones here, and me and Casey are both snake lovers. But you have to appreciate if you live in a certain part of the world, like Corbett was, the bite from any number of snakes there was that your life was over. You were dead. Mm-hmm. So I get why they didn't have this appreciation for them over there, and probably still don't today. And I don't really blame them.
No. You've got to be really careful when you put your shoes on in the morning. Your boots are tipped out to make sure there's no scorpions or anything crawled in. And if a towel's on the floor, you pick it up very carefully. That sort of thing. You have to develop those disciplines. But I came across scorpions in quite big numbers there. They were sort of quite social in places, which was a new one for me. Little black scorpions, and I don't think the size has got anything to do with the size of the venom that's in them, but
Are some of those deadly over there? The little scorpions?
I think they're pretty nasty. I don't think deadly. Well, I hope not. I was quite close to them.
The scorpions are creepy, man. They're like they're a cool animal, but they're just like ooh. On
occasion, you can find scorpions where I live.
Really?
Right?
Yeah, you can. There's little tiny like bark scorpions. And they're not a big deal. They're very rare. You rarely ever see them. They're not a problem. But, like you have, I think it's probably the Middle East or maybe Africa. They have that scorpion called the death stalker that the sting will kill you. It is a very deadly sting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Can you imagine being that's how you go, is being stung by a scorpion?
No,
yes.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Fine.
So,
They've got nasty spiders in India as well. The only ones that I came across where Jim was a bizarre little thing that I don't think the spider bit you, but the locals seem to be telling me that its pee was poisonous. So don't touch it.
Or would it spit? Would it spit the venom at you?
No.
There's a few that do that.
Urine.
Oh, actual urine?
The urine was a poison. So don't touch the urine. And they were quite serious about this. They were looking for the thing, searching the room to make sure there was none in before you went to bed, sort of thing.
I think Casey's urine is actually venomous too.
It is.
Maybe that's a debate I shouldn't have started.
When I feel threatened, I just melts everything it touches and starts smoking.
Which is why, Ian, for listeners of the show, they know that Casey's preferred receptacle for urination is an energy drink called Monster. It's a can of white Monster. But for some reason, his urine, it'll contain his urine, whereas plastic would just melt away. So
I can only pee in aluminum. Otherwise, it just melts right through the plastic.
Wow. There's another mental picture which I wish I didn't have in my head.
All right. So, away from urine, we had talked about some of those hairy encounters that Corbett had, and we laid the groundwork for this earlier in that he was not one to exaggerate. He was very modest.
Yeah.
It's generally accepted that what he said happened.
Yes.
That he was not one to exaggerate his stories. And which is amazing because so many of these stories of these man-eaters that he killed, like he was this close to death many times when he was hunting these things.
Yes. Yeah. He took risks up to a point. Well, we would see them as risks.
And it's almost like going back to what the supernatural is that the cats had some sort of supernatural ability to where, and some thought process that you wouldn't really attribute to an animal of it. You could almost put yourself into the mind of some of these animals, specifically the tigers, and think like they were clearly thinking, this guy is hunting me to kill me. I'm going to get one over on him. I'm going to surprise him by he's following me right now. So rather than run away like you would expect most animals to do, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to wait for him because he's going to walk by and I'm going to kill this guy.
Yes. Yeah. Jim wrote to Maggie once that he thought that every man-eater that he'd hunted had also hunted him. So there were occasions when he was quite convinced they were aware that they were being followed, and they were trying to turn the tables on him.
Yeah.
But he knew that, of course. He obviously knew that they thought like that. So how far you can take that, the perception of animals. I mean, we all must have experienced that if you're out in the forest. I've thought a few times, when I focus my eyes and my mind onto an animal, I'm not going to shoot it. I was watching it or looking through binoculars. The animal miraculously at that moment turns and looks straight at me.
Yeah.
We've all experienced that. Any hunter that's walked in the forest for years has experienced that. Sometimes I'm almost trying to pretend I haven't seen them.
Yeah.
To stop them getting that. And that's not supernatural, but that's something that I think a load of guys would accept.
It's just it's insane because it's almost like a fact. And there's whole, like, especially in the bow hunting community, it's there's guys that will, when the deer, let's say they're in a tree stand or a ground blind and the deer is moving, they will purposely not fixate their eyes on it.
Yes, I'm like that sometimes.
They'll look ahead of it or on, like, right in front of it, and then when they draw back, then they look at it so that because they're convinced that if I put my eyes on it, somehow that's going to affect the behavior of the animal.
I accept that totally,
and I think there's got to be something to that because, like you were talking about, you felt like you were being watched. I think anybody that's been in the woods long enough, like I think we've all felt that at some point or another.
Yeah.
And like something's watching me.
I'm sure. And Jim was obviously very perceptive about that sort of thing, and he understood things to a great extent. Mm-hmm. Those forests he was very familiar with. He'd known them since childhood. He'd been out with a gun in those forests since he was 8 years old or whatever. And I guess his mind was open to those sort of feelings or those perceptions of what's going on. And I guess you have to say it worked for him. It saved him probably on a lot of occasions.
One of those interesting encounters that I think of, and it wasn't a man eater. I guess it was a man attacker. I guess when he was younger, him and a friend were out hunting, and they encountered, or Jim understood that there was a tiger around. So they were just trying to get out of there and not kill anything. And his friend foolishly fired a gun at the wrong time, and the tiger came out and attacked.
Yeah.
Jim climbed up a tree, and his friend couldn't get up the tree in time.
Really?
Do you know the story that I'm talking about? I know I'm not doing a great job of describing it.
I don't. I never heard that.
I recall reading something about that a long time ago. Yes, I do.
His friend was pinned against the tree, and the tiger mauled him, and Jim was up the tree.
Was that the two brothers?
I think it may have been.
Yeah. Two brothers were there. One guy got, and his stomach, he was disemboweled.
Right.
That's the guy. Yes.
Jim.
So he was squashed against the tree, sort of thing. Yeah.
The tiger mauled him, and then the tiger left. Like, just
and
made
they stuck his guts back in.
Jim stuffed his guts in, and I think he said he took dried grass and filled the holes with dried grass, and then they carried him back to the village. And I think he died of old age, I think.
Doesn't sound good, does it, Casey?
No, it doesn't. I would think that you would die of an infection from that kind of a situation.
Yeah. The claws of predatory cats. I mean, I think a lot of people must have died of their injuries then. There wasn't antibiotics like we know now. Penicillin was years away, wasn't it?
Yeah. That reminds us of the story with that couple, that husband and wife that Jim stumbled on. And she got attacked and dragged him back inside. And then she ended up, she died of an infection. And he didn't even, the infection progressed so fast that it's actually noted that he didn't want to sleep in the hut with them because the smell was so strong.
That's desperate, isn't it? Yes. People, of course, in the hills there, they still live in huts just the same as that.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of small farmers that have a plot that we would see as the size of a garden. And they're living in a hut that they've made themselves out of what's available in the forest. So thatch on the roof.
Sounds nice.
Woven sort of timber walls or whatever with mud sort of smeared on, and not much of a door. So those sort of buildings, they're not really offering 100% protection to something like a leopard if it's determined to get in.
Right.
And of course, when it's really warm, people sleep with the doors open.
Yeah.
And the ablutions are outside.
Because it's so hot, so they leave the door open to. Yeah, exactly.
So that was absolutely normal and common, and it still happens today in large parts of India.
Well, the odds are overwhelming that you're not going to be attacked, but they're not zero.
Right.
I think it's very unlikely you're going to be attacked, but the odds aren't zero. I was in a place once in the hills like that, and I was sleeping with the head of the bed was right below an open window. The open window was 6 foot across, whatever. There was shutters that we'd opened up, so it was the width of the bed. And there was a horrific bellowing in the middle of the night, totally dark. I went to sit up in bed, banged my face off something, my head off something, just 6 inches above me, so I couldn't even sit up in bed. Had no idea what was going on. I was totally disoriented by this in the dark, the noise, the bash on my face, the fact I couldn't sit up. Eventually sort of came to, had another attempt at sitting up. Everything's fine. A sort of a domestic buffalo or something. It stuck its head in the window, bellowed, and I'd sat up under its jaw. It bashed onto the bottom.
Oh my God.
Wow.
So,
oh my God.
So that was an interesting evening.
Yeah.
All at 2 o'clock in the morning, yeah.
You've had some really interesting experiences. I mean, since you mentioned the story about the wolfhound getting grabbed while you were there, I mean, if you've ever seen a wolfhound, I mean, that's
big dogs.
That's the last dog you would expect to just get snatched off of a porch by a leopard.
Yeah, it was a big leopard because it could reach higher up a tree than I could.
Mm.
Now, leopards, as a cat, they have a huge variation in size. So the smallest leopards, which are feeding on maybe rodents or scavengers or whatever, are really just the size of a sheepdog sort of thing, smallish. The biggest leopards, the males are getting close to the size of a moderate female or an immature sort of tiger. So there's a huge size variation in the species. They're all the same species. And obviously you get wet forest leopards, dry mountain forest. They're very adaptable to the sort of climate and conditions that they're in. But the size range is huge, and they're taking completely different prey.
Yeah. Yeah, they are the most widely spread. Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong. They're the most widely spread big cat in the world, right?
Yeah, sure.
Second to the mountain lion or puma.
Yeah, that makes sense. Ian, on the subject of leopards, and I guess a lot of this is a spoiler for people who haven't read the books, but it's just so incredible. The when Corbett finally shot the man-eating leopard of Rudraprayag, could you recount that in instance, that the circumstances surrounding that?
This was the tree at Gollabrai. Jim had hunted the leopard in 1925 and unsuccessfully went back in 1926. And people were still being killed. This was on a pilgrim route up to Hindu holy shrines in northern India. So it was quite important to try and I suppose reduce the fear that these people were living under, traveling up to the hills. And they were aware that the leopard was trying to cross bridges to get from one side of a river to the other. The bridge was at times blocked with thorns to stop it getting across. At other times, they kept the bridge open and actually built themselves, for a while, a small sort of, I suppose, hut in the parapet of the bridge. At other times, they were actually sort of resting out flat on the top of a concrete, I suppose it was a tower where the cables went for the bridge, all unsuccessfully. And eventually, Jim worked out that I suppose that the correct word isn't territory. The leopard had a route that it traversed fairly regularly. And Jim thought that the route would be places where there's prey, potentially, food, not necessarily just humans, safe places to lie up, water, the things that it was looking for. And Jim thought there was a fair chance that within 10 days it would appear at Gollabrai. So he spent 10 nights sitting up this tree waiting for it to appear, goats baiting the road in front, decided on one more night, and the leopard made an appearance. So on the 1st of May, 1926, the centenary's just passed, Jim shot the leopard. But he got a 1 second sort of view of this leopard. The gun was pointed on it. He said he didn't have time to move the barrel. If it hadn't been on it, he wouldn't have got it. But as the light came on, he pulled the trigger. The leopard jumped. Couldn't see it. So Jim spent the rest of the night sat in the tree, wondering, do we have a wounded leopard? Did I miss it? What happened? Is it safe to get down? Is it watching me now? All that. And then as soon as obviously it gets light in the morning, 2nd of May, down the tree, and here's the leopard dead in a hole 50 yards away.
What I found so interesting. Sorry, Ian. What I found so interesting about that was on that hunt, Jim had a new invention. He had a torchlight, which a battery powered flashlight, and that had broken a few times on the trip, and had to have somebody like travel by foot long distances to get to either bring him a new flashlight or to bring the part to repair it.
Yes, all that. Yeah.
And so as Jim has the rifle trained on the leopard, the flashlight died. So Jim took the shot in the dark.
Yep.
And to what we were saying earlier, knowing what we know based on what we read, is that this leopard I would assume this leopard's fully capable of revenge.
Definitely.
And this leopard might have said, this dude either shot me and thought he killed me, or he missed. So he's going to have to come out of that tree eventually. So I'm going to wait here for him. And when he comes down, I'm going to kill him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I forget on the spur of the moment which tiger it was, but Jim had a shot at a tiger from a tree one night. I'm not sure it was the Kanda man-eater, and clearly he missed. And the tiger didn't know where he was. The shot had come from nowhere as far as the tiger was concerned. But after about 15 minutes, stock still, Jim sort of couldn't see anything, so just lowered the rifle to his legs, and heard the answering growl from the tiger. So the tiger wasn't wounded, and it was watching him. So now it knew where he was.
Oh my gosh, that's so terrifying. What's the other one? What's the other one where he was in the he was on a branch, and he had like his team hoisted him up onto the branch, and there was like these
put the thorns behind him, and the leopard's pulling at the bloody thorns.
Yeah, and it's pitch black, and he has a goat like right in front of him, chained out, and the leopard snuck past the goat, and he just feels like the ladder or whatever it was that was like propping up the branch, like they're like moving, and it's trying to climb up.
He
must
have been sitting on a branch that must have been close to horizontal. So to stop the animal coming up behind him, because he realized this was no ordinary leopard, they tied a load of thorn branches on, and some of the stems of the thorn branches were obviously long enough to come past Jim, so they were like armrests, if you like.
Yeah.
And as you say, the leopard ignored the goats and thought that Jim would do nicely.
Oh my God!
But when it got to the thorns, it couldn't get past them, so it started trying to pull the thorns out. So that must have been a character
in the pitch black.
That must have been a character building moment.
God. And he didn't kill it that night, right? He ended up shooting that one on the ground with his team. And as soon as the leopard, they came in on the leopard, right? And then what happened? All their lights went out and they all ran or something?
He had a shotgun full of slugs because he thought he would have more chance of hitting it with a sort of
so he had buckshot, not slugs, and slug would be a singular.
Well, a slug at the time, technically a slug would be viewed as I suppose a round shot made to look a bit like the shape of a bullet, if that's not a sort of a contradiction. So you'd fire it out a shotgun, one single lump was technically what it was.
Okay.
But slang at the time, slugs were basically big shot.
Oh, okay.
And the charge that he was using in that cartridge, he described it as 8 round shot in that charge. So it was out of 12-bore shotgun. But that was a sort of the terms that were used. Typically, you'd say now that would be 9. You would have sort of 3, then 3, then 3. But he reckoned it was 8. So we're not to doubt him, I suppose.
No.
Anyway, that worked. I'm sure you do have more chance with that into the chest of a leopard than one.
That's what I would use.
Because, like you say, all the guys who were with him with the flaming torches, they all dropped them and ran, which is maybe understandable. They weren't armed after all.
No, yeah, and he said that they were embarrassed and he didn't want to make them feel worse. And in fact, if he was in their shoes, he probably would have ran also. I think he made the point to mention that in his book, I think.
Yeah, he was very generous like that. Yeah,
he had some
there's one of his 2 of his letters where he's slightly less generous on the spur of the moment, but he was one of those hero characters that you wonder sometimes how well you want to know your heroes and how close you want to look, and I suppose. I didn't come across anything about Jim that made me sort of feel that that was, unfortunately he did that or reacted in that way or whatever. He's still a hero to me at the end of it. And I'm still fascinated with him now. Yeah. If I came up with anything else, I'd love it. So I'm still interested.
Yeah. He was an amazing figure. And think about it. You're there, your life is on the line, your whole team is with you, and the thing growls or whatever the situation was, and they just freaking run and leave you in the pitch black standing there. It's like, that's terrifying.
Thanks, guys.
I'd be so mad.
If Jim were doing this today and social media was at his fingertips, he wouldn't have a social media account posting this stuff, would he?
No, he wouldn't. No. It's incredible, actually, that the guy's legacy sort of carries on. I mean, the national park's still there. India has got no doubt about his legacy. The park's still named the Corbett National Park.
He's one of the few white. He's one of the few white people in India that's revered. Yeah, he is. Yeah, history's been sort of good to him, but that's entirely fair and reasonable. When I've been there, people have been very keen to talk about him, and I've come across a lot of people who want those stories to be told. He made an impression on so many people. People have come up to talk to me about the bedtime stories of Jim that I went to bed with all those years ago, that sort of thing, and the impact he made on their lives. So yeah. Well, I want to leave with a couple of questions. If you were to, other than your book, which once again I want to encourage everyone, Undiscovered Corbett by Ian Douglas, pick up a copy. What would you encourage somebody to read in addition to your book if they wanted to get an introduction to Corbett? Many Years of Kumaun. Jim's first book. I think it's a great book. That's the one. Jungle Law is a really interesting book. That's where Jim tries to pass on so many of the lessons that he sort of learned through his life. I suppose he tells anecdotes in the book, and that's the book started out in his mind as a book for children. It eventually morphed into something else, and I've always been fascinated by the chapter that he didn't include. It was felt that the book was going to be too long, and a chapter on moving silently through forests to see the wildlife was left out, which now seems such a loss to us all. Yeah. And I've tried to imagine again and again, what would he have said? So the things that any hunter would recognize, when you come to the edge of a forest, stop and look and adapt to the pace of the forest. So the animals and the vegetation that we're moving through, there's a natural pace to go through it. Don't be too fast. Don't be too slow. How often do I stop? How often do I look around? Using my eyes, using my ears, using my nose. I mean, where I am in the UK, every time I walk through a forest, I smell a fox because I know that smell. The birds, the alarm calls even here would say to me, that bird has seen what it conceives to be a predator. You have that in the States as well, obviously, and the tracking medium where things are fed, slots of the deer. But that chapter that's missing still fascinates me.
Is there any access to that chapter? How did you?
No.
Okay.
I know that it was supposed to be in the book. There was several things didn't make it to the book. There was meant to be quite a few photographs go into Jungle Law, which are now in my book. I found the photographs. I haven't found the written chapter, so I'm just speculating. But any hunter, I could see your head going crazy.
Oh, yeah.
You're thinking that through, and Jim went through that, obviously, with all his years of experience. We'd all like to read that chapter, wouldn't we?
I'd love to read that. Of course.
I think there's
so that's a holy grail.
Some hunters that just inject themselves into the woods. There's no thought into what this plan is, what that plan is, what these other animals that I'm not pursuing are. Why are these birds calling the way they are? They don't really have the curiosity about that. They don't really care.
If I lift that raven and I alarm it, the first thing that happens is the deer that I'm actually after looks up at the raven.
Mm-hmm.
And says, why has the raven done that? And all those sort of things, yeah. And I think the pace that a lot of people go through forest is wrong. There is a natural pace. It can be too slow. You get nowhere. But a lot of people move too fast and they don't stop often enough. Every time parts of a habitat change from one zone of forest, if you like, to another, when I'm moving to the edge of a clearing, I always stop at the interfaces at the changes as well.
Oh yeah.
Just because there's something in my head that says this is a place that matters. Yeah. I don't need to know why it matters. The habitat will tell me that. And after a while, these things become semi-automatic. I suspect I'm not the best person to describe this because I've been doing it for so long. I feel almost like I'm on autopilot.
Right.
It just happens. I'm not doing the analysis anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. When I was young and we were with our bows and we would talk about still hunting and we'd talk to more experienced, guys and how do you still hunt properly through the woods? And like me and my brother, we looked like idiots. There's no other way to describe it. It was like basically the only information we got was like take 3 slow steps and then stop and wait, and then take 3 more slow steps and then stop. And like after like 2 hours, you got like 80 yards through the woods. But there's like you said, it's something that like has to be cultivated, and you have to be in the environment long enough and feel the pace of the woods and engulf yourself into what you're doing to choose the pace for what you're going to do. And yeah, of course, stepping out into an open clearing, just barging out into the open, that's not like, that would be
not going to work.
No, you would never do that. No, you would wait and see if there's anything out there. It's an ambush point, if you're hunting at least, or even photographing,
Yeah.
So Ian, is there anything else that you would like to share about Corbett?
Well, as far as the book goes, it's on its way to the States. There's a bundle on a boat now. I'd obviously hope that it gets a good response in North America. It's out there at $30. It's on Amazon and all good bookshops, I hope.
Good. Yeah, good. Now, question for you. Is there an audiobook coming out of this?
It's been discussed, but I don't know.
Make it happen.
Because the things that might be difficult with it is there's some really great photographs in it.
Yeah, no, I'm going to buy the book.
Are great, yeah.
I'm going to buy the book. It's just if I, being married and having kids, if I sit down to do anything, I'm a criminal.
Yeah, that's a challenge. Yeah,
I'm not allowed to sit down. You can't.
There's over 100 photographs in the book, and at first I thought Merlin and books would quibble about that.
Casey gets hunted like a tiger when he sits down.
Yeah, my wife is a tigress. We're lurking in the reeds, watching me. Yeah, I can't sit down and relax and do anything. I have to be moving. So if I'm sitting reading a book, it's going to be a huge problem. So I do all my reading, quote unquote reading, through audiobooks, and a lot of it's while I'm doing other things. And I know a lot of people are that way nowadays.
So it's playing when you're in the car journey, that sort of thing.
Oh, correct. Yes, and a lot of people do that. So I think you should 100% put an audiobook out. I think it would be a huge.
I'll push for that.
A huge plus, and you're still going to get it's still going to be sold as a book, so you'll still make money. I think it's a better for people like me. It would be a good business decision.
I'll pass that on.
Well, Ian, thank you so much for coming on. We hope you guys enjoyed this. I don't even want to call it a dive because there's so much of Corbett out there. It would take us days to discuss, but I hope you enjoyed this foray into the life of Jim Corbett and some of his more famous adventures. And I really highly encourage you guys to get Ian's book and to also read some Jim Corbett.
100%.
Yeah.
All right.
Read Jim Corbett. Thank you guys. It's been great.